We are live. We are live. My name is Steve Jaguar.
And I'm Mike Foster.
Looking very puzzled. This show is a video newsletter for your impatient world, talking about all things cybersecurity, Kubernetes, cloud native, following the money of the big spenders, and also including some hands-on automation for your pleasure.
And we got a pretty packed show for you today. We're talking a little bit about home labs, specifically our home lab. We have a big announcement about the website, and we're going to be looking at Headlamp, Trivy, CockroachDB, and a bunch of other tools. So welcome. And my mouse just died right at this time. Welcome to the show. Yeah, so if you like the show, I'm back. I'm still here. If you like the show, if you're on Twitch, follow us, leave some comments in the chat. You can get all of our links on YouTube as well as the show if you missed anything. And yeah, leave some comments. Let us know what you want to hear us talk about and anything that we missed, because we got, like we said, a bunch of sections and a bunch of things to talk about. So welcome.
Absolutely. All right. What have you been up to this week? Anything exciting?
Just getting back into the swing of things. I feel like it was a little bit slow after summer started, long weekend. So just a bunch of work. What about you?
Yeah. Obviously, we're going to talk about the website because I did a bit of work there. I now have a beer tap next to me.
Speaking of home labs.
That's probably the most exciting thing I've done all week for sure. So yeah, making big progress.
Yeah. And, I guess we'll do 2 shout outs. So Steve's got a home lab that we've kind of talked about over the shows, and we have a website built now.
Should we bring it up? Yeah. We're going to talk about boom. Zoof. I'm going to talk about a little bit about how this exists at the end of the show during tool time, but it is there. And Michael found a bug while we were setting it up, and that www doesn't work. Only the pure domain works at the moment, but I've got to add the older episodes, but we're creating a whole automation thing around this, but I'll get into that. So it's cool. You can watch the latest episode. Look, it's now. This is weird. If I were to play this, what's going to happen? Oh my God, it's us watching us.
It's Bo Burnham's skit.
We could do the whole thing. Could be a reaction video to ourselves reacting.
That's too funny. Yeah. And this actually led into our first discussion that we wanted to kick it off with, because we saw a post on Reddit in our cybersecurity, and it was, what are some things to do in a home lab? And yeah, so it says, I've been recently given the opportunity to move into more tech-based roles. And what are some things you can do to keep up to speed on things? I don't have full access to a network, but I have a home lab. And I am a huge backer of home labs. just because you can do so much, you can set up development environments, different environments. You can work through different layers of issues all the way up to, just running operating systems, to Kubernetes, to, running a web application like Steve set up. There's so much that you can get out of home labs, and you don't have to pay cloud prices, let's say. I think in the long run, it is definitely more affordable if that's the route you want to go.
Yeah, you just got to spend 400 pounds on Raspberry Pis and have an incredible amount of patience.
Yeah, that's true. The investment definitely is worth the cost, though. And honestly, I've seen some pretty good prices on eBay and things like that of people selling old systems. So
yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I bought some latest and greatest Raspberry Pis, things like that. But there's lots of single board computers you can get. You've got some kind of weird monster neon glow thing in your home lab. I think it's great because I don't have to, particularly in the Kubernetes and cloud, like where I have my own personal cloud in this landscape, being able to play with Kubernetes, particularly when you're like training, if you're trying to train for CK, CKS, the courses that offer you these environments are cool, but to be able to have super cheap your own thing running that isn't on your laptop, that is just something you can access, for me has been amazing as a learning experience and practical as well.
Yeah, and it's something you can actually you can put on GitHub that you've practiced too, right? Like it is, hey, you went and set up CentOS and did a bunch of automation with Terraform or Ansible to do whatever. That's a project, and it's something that you can actually showcase as work that you've done. And that's not a lot of stuff that they teach in school too, right? Like you're not working with Kickstart files in CentOS. So it's anyways, good addition to
No,
profile.
they don't teach anything in school. All right, that's cool. So if you're watching this and you're like, I have a home lab and it's exotic, give us a comment, hook us up. Like,
actually,
us.
I would love to see a GitHub account of somebody else's home lab, so I know if I'm being insane with mine. It's be really cool.
You are probably being insane with you. If you do have a crazy suggestion to offer, and maybe even want to just come on the show, there you go. That's how you get a hold of us.
Yeah.
All right, so we jump on ahead. This is kind of a cool one. I think we'll talk a little bit about, and that is, amazingly, we didn't talk about this earlier.
Mm-hmm. Immutable ConfigMaps and
stable.
Yeah. So ConfigMaps, I think it was beta in 1.18 for Kubernetes. Somehow I glossed over it, but I thought ConfigMaps and secrets are always a hot topic in Kubernetes, and using ConfigMaps is the correct way to basically set up environment variables in your different pods, right? If you're setting them up in the pod or deployment manifest, you're going to have to consistently change those. And if you have any variables that are mapping across other deployments, it's very useful to have something in a config map like this. What was introduced in 1.2.1 is a stable version of saying, hey, the config map is immutable. So the only way that you can make changes to this config map is to destroy the resource and reinitialize it as a cluster admin or with the correct permissions to do that. Why?
Cool.
I think it's great. And there's another part to this too, is config maps can be basically open by default. They can be read only and they can be immutable. And let's say there isn't as much attention paid to how they are set up like this. Read only being they can be mapped into different pods, different deployments, and you can't change anything. If it isn't read only, technically I can map a config map in. That container can change the variables, which would then propagate to the other containers. So there, let's just say that is not best practice, and it really shouldn't. I believe read only is the default, but it is worth making sure that is the case in your scenario. Regardless, I think that there should be some sort of life cycle around config maps for your clusters, your configurations, whatever you're doing in your organization, to focus on immutable config maps. You could, and if I was an admin, I would try to enforce immutable config maps in production, but not in dev, because you're going to need people going in and changing things on the fly. That being said, I think config maps should version with your application, right? So if you have variables that need to be injected into your application or your container, you need to make sure that it's specifically version tied as those variables change, or if you're doing some sort of change to the application. And honestly, like if you think about workflow, if people are using Customize or Helm or anything like that, that's going to be easy, because what you're going to do is you're going to basically just put that variable into your application, your version number to your application and your config map, and everything's going to change with the change in version. So that's the workflow I would probably recommend and try to do if I was an admin. I'm not sure if anybody's had any experience in the chat with working with immutable config map, since it is relatively new. And I mean, I don't even think most organizations are working with 118 at this point. I think it's still like 116, 117. So just know that that's probably going to be coming in the pipeline you're probably going to see it getting adopted in security tools and just general best practice in the next probably 3 to 6 months as people move into 118 and 119 in their organizations.
You've actually kind of given me an idea, like where I don't know that any of the, like obviously personal bias Chekhov, I don't know that there is a rule that actually looks to see if your config map is immutable, and gives you maybe a low warning to say that you might want to do this. That would be an interesting rule to add.
I think regardless, it's useful to alert people, not just because it might be best practice to be immutable. I think read only solves a lot of issues in most cases. Just making sure that they are. I think alerting on if it isn't read only is really important. And I also think just knowing that if it's immutable, you need to delete it, because I would guarantee you somebody's going to run into the issue where they're going to be like, why can't I change this config map? It's like, oh, it's immutable.
What does that mean? Where did that come from?
It's just going to be like an extra little like kickback of, hey, like you can't do this. It's normally when people start with Kubernetes, they always have issues understanding persistent volumes and volume claims, right? And that constant like, oh, it's still bound, you need to delete it, and what's the timing on that? Oh, it doesn't delete it right away, it puts it in the background. So it's one of those workflow things that at least you should have some visibility in your Kubernetes tools to understand exactly how your config maps are being used. And honestly, how many applications are using that single config map? Because I'd argue that you should have a config map per deployment. If you are mounting a single config map into multiple deployments, you just have an extra vector, right?
That was the example that was in the actual doc. It almost felt like that was the motivation for making it immutable, so that you didn't start tinkering with things you didn't understand.
Yeah, and it was probably one of those anti-patterns, right, of people using config maps that way to say, hey, I have 150 applications or 150 containers, different types of containers. They're all very similar. Well, can I just have one config map? It's like, yeah, sure. Yeah, you can. And in order to do that, we should make it immutable then, right?
Yeah, makes sense. I like it. All right, good one. Shall we blast off into the next subject? And you added this, and I haven't even looked at it. So it's free books, free stuff.
Yeah, not really a subject, just a book bundle that I thought was really interesting. You can get a ton of great resources here. I mean, you can always torrent these ones, but it is kind of a pay what you want, and it's going to charity. So it's a very in-depth book bundle where you can get it all in one go. Yeah, so I thought it was really interesting. I'm going to use this just because unless somebody else has another resource where like I can give directly to the authors or something like that, I don't really want to just pull PDFs online, if I can avoid it. But yeah,
do you get the actual books?
That's my understanding.
Wow.
Unless somebody's like, hey, Mike, this is a scam. But
well, yeah, that's interesting. I got approached with Michael Mann, I think watching this, to write a book for Pact about DevSecOps. We said no because we were too busy.
Cool, but yeah,
they're good books.
This was posted in the cybersecurity Reddit, so I have a feeling that
reliable authors.
Yeah, people have done a little bit of research. But yeah, if you want to check out the link, it'll be in the YouTube channel, the YouTube post after the show.
Actually, I snuck it in before the show. It's already there.
Did you? Nice. Yeah, then it's there.
Yeah. Don't leave now. Go after.
Pretty much. All right. Now we are done the general news, general updates. We're moving into some CVE time.
Now what starts with the letter C?
One of these days we're going to come back. I'm going to have a huge cookie. I
Yeah.
gotta plan better.
Or just all blue.
Or I'll be wearing my well, when I put on the Cookie Monster outfit, Chewbacca gets a little funny on me.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
have a Kubernetes CVE, a very low one overall, endpoint slices. So we talked about config maps, endpoint slices. If you scroll down a little bit, they are used mostly to give like a pod, like a CIDR range or something like that. This is more about shutting it down. So if you go into Kubernetes.io as the docs, it'll talk to you about endpoint slices. Really, it's about, hey, I have a deployment in a namespace. Let's say the namespace is default, and I want to set a range for all of these specific pods so that they can get a 10.1.2.3 / whatever, so that all the pods have the same subnet. And you can do this for IPv6 and IPv4 as well. One of the issues they've noticed is that you can map that to pods across namespaces, and that shouldn't be allowed. Most of it really, the namespace is kind of that box to wrap all of your C groups and all of your Linux capabilities around. So the fact that you have pods in different namespaces that can be on the same subnet without some sort of rule is pretty big. The issue is it's a very specific mapping, and not a lot of organizations or clusters really use endpoint slices. A lot of the times, an endpoint slice will be used for. Actually, you wouldn't even use endpoint slices for database. You would use like I'm forgetting, a stateful set, right? That maps a very specific IP to the database, so it doesn't change. Yeah, so it's you can also turn the setting off. And I was talking with Steve a little bit earlier about this, and there are a lot of extra settings in Kubernetes, and it's worthwhile understanding what settings are turned on, what's available, because you can turn specific features off. You can set the Kubernetes API to not allow the creation of endpoint slices. I think it's really useful. Like if you're not using endpoint slices, turn it off. Right? Why even allow it to happen? So
that's a whole. We could talk forever about taking away things you're not going to use, like curl, or ls. Dangerous commands that you could remove from containers that people don't.
Any
but
package
anyway, anything. Yeah, we could be here all day with that. And yet, here's another one: turn off endpoint slice if you're not using it, which is probably most of you.
Yeah, we just need something a little bit more formal for Kubernetes, like through a UI or something. Because I mean, you saw it; it was just like a, hey, here's a script, here's a text command to say, hey, API, turn this off. I don't know, something a little bit more structured for all of the features that you can turn off, right?
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah. Anything else? You want to jump onto this more fascinating one?
Yes, this is a very interesting one. I'm excited.
Yeah, I guess I'll grab this one. This CVE 2021-22555. Super old, 15 years old, heap out of bounds write vulnerability in the Linux net filter that was powerful enough to bypass all security mitigations. I argue with that, and I'll get into why that is, and achieve kernel code execution. So, and it was used, and I'll let me pop this up so you get the context. This capture the flag, or case capture the flag CTF. Yes, there we go. But they put out almost like a bug bounty on break the capture the flag before we do the capture the flag, just so like, because you're inviting all these Kubernetes hacker geniuses to play your capture the flag. So invite them in advance to find out that you actually set it up wrong, so somebody doesn't cheat and go grab the flags in a really random way. So they do put flags in there, and they challenge people to do it, and they offered $5,000, $10,000 to make it happen. And somebody did. So, and this is the exploit that they created. But it looks like this is such a fast animation that does it, right? Exploit, bam, you're root. Like there it is. Hey, it's too fast.
It's that easy.
It's that easy. Now, it's not a short article. there's a lot of detail, and the research was based on a few older vulnerabilities which inspired them. So then they started searching for generally buffer overflow symptoms like memcopy and memset, and then looking for the context of them, actually looking at previous exploit attempts in the same kind of code, eventually creating this series of overlapping memory allocations so that they could specifically write too much in order to affect an adjacent pointer, and this, that, and the other thing, they end up blowing out of the container, essentially. So I thought, awesome, because when you go all the way down to the bottom, you actually realize this is the GitHub repo, and the code to make this happen is available. And it's a very simple, if we can click through here, let's see. There you go, ba-boing, C file. I mean, it's almost as long as the article. But you can pick it apart and you can see how it works, and it's all good, right? And the instructions to deploy it, if we go back, are build it, run it. So, and this is where I'm going to start picking it apart a little bit, because the way the KCTF works is that they give you an entry point, a single entry point, and they actually explain it in quite a bit of detail here, so that you end up in a starting container, and it says, all right, try and go from there. And I immediately thought, well, hold on. So this container had GCC in it. How did you get the code into the container? You would have had to have get, or you would have had to have had, you could just cut and paste it if you've got it written into a terminal, because it's not that big of a file. But you had to have GCC, which means you would have had to have had the build essentials in Linux installed, which is a massive install. Like when you just talked about, don't have things you don't need in a container. So how is this person building this exploit and a very specific build style? And so I tried it. Obviously, this is where it's going, using my home lab, because I have build essentials on one of my pies up there. I have GCC, so I thought, okay, now it's not going to be quite the same because the platform's different. It's ARM64, but I can fiddle the bits on it to try and make it build. That's a minor inconvenience. But I couldn't build it. I started to jump through hoops and I gave up eventually, because some of the problems I had was that, if I can go down, some of the dependencies that are required here, and the dependencies on dependencies, depending on the system you're on. There's a lot of header files here. And there's even a header file dependency which you can't see, a dependency on dependency, which is like Bluetooth.h. So it was looking for stuff that I'm like, there's no way. Like, there's just no way I'm going to have all the dependencies required to make that. Like, that's a fully functional Linux. Almost like a developer level Linux box that you need to make that build. And I'm sure it works. But I just wanted to see how realistic was it that I could get if I got into a container in a CTF. Like,
my only guess, the only thing that I'm seeing is most of the times when you're doing like a KCTF, at some point in the workflow, you'll get into a container that will give you a wget or a curl, like that will give you something where you can go and import. So if there was like, hey, maybe it's the third flag and we dropped a wget in this specific container but didn't tell you, and so you need to go and like look to see what packages you have, and then they finally realize, okay, well, I can pull from this one, then technically you could pull the executable and turn it, right? That's my only guess. But yeah, no, you couldn't build that. There's no shot. And if you could build it in your CTF, you can pretty much do anything you want, right?
That's kind of where I'm going with it. It just seemed like it's a very clever exploit. It might be useful to have it pre-built for a lot of platforms. So then when you get the accidental curl, we get whatever, and then you just go get it and you're done.
Yeah. And
but
realistically,
that's
how most, I don't want to speak for the hackers, but like that's what most people would do, right? Like you have some sort of, network tools, you have all of these in your let's say tool case, and it's either USB or a wget or from a repo or something like that. Once you get access to the environment, and then you just go and see what works. Not very many people are just hacking on the fly, right? Writing code and capture the flags like that.
Yeah, it was, but I'm sure it's pretty cool. So there's a way to set it up.
Cool.
But I just thought it was a little bit interesting. And plus, like they said, what's their words? Bypass all modern security mitigations. No, because a lot of security mitigations watch for anomalous behavior, and seeing something running that has never run before and is totally off the charts could get your pod killed, could, like, all sorts of very normal security mitigations would pick that up.
Yeah.
All right.
If you have any sort of runtime detection and response in Linux, that would trip some flags.
That would trip some flags. All right. Awesome. Still, go read it, because the amount of work that went into it was
the big exploit too.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
It's cool when people take problems. Well, I like that the crux of it for me was that here's somebody who just went to the Linux kernel and goes, I'm just going to look at all the mem copies and memory operations and see where there's and trace the user controllable or even non-controllable paths that dictate what's being allocated and destroyed, and find a moment where it's not being double checked.
Mm-hmm.
And look at that, 15 years ago. That's where you're going to find the bad code, because nobody cared about security 15 years ago. Seriously.
Yeah.
It's like, look at Jenkins. Jenkins is so old. Go find code that hasn't been touched in 10, 12 years that was written by the original author. Worst code ever.
Yeah. Yeah, things have changed. I mean, they patched it extremely quickly, right? Like, this was found and it was patched within a week and pushed out. So, and then disclosed 3 months later.
But I didn't patch anything.
It's yeah, you could tell, like, the fixes for this code. Let's just say that they're, I don't want to speak for it because I didn't fix it. I didn't look at it, but I think there's so many lines of code in Linux and just technologies these days that once they're pointed out, it's like, okay, well, we can fix that. It's just, you need those people who are willing to go and do their due diligence and root around down there. So shout out.
Smart.
And they got money for charity too. I think it was $20,000, right, that Google donated for this. So pretty cool overall.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So that's good news, leading into the other stuff that is somewhat weird news. Yeah. WTF section.
I love when this happens. I love when we talk about something one week and it gets super weird the next week.
Yeah, did we say that something like this was going to happen?
We did say something weird's going to happen. It's going to be one of these ones we're going to keep following.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yay, it is. Ransomware gang websites disappear from internet, which is hard to do.
Yeah, and this is I feel like I'm having deja vu from the group that attacked the U.S. pipeline, right, and demanded 5 million Bitcoin. And it's like, well, we didn't really want to shut down the pipeline, but now we have a national audience against us, so we need to disappear quickly, right? I feel like it's somewhat of the same. But it's like you can be if you're a hacker, it's like you want to be known, but not too well known. Because as soon as people start coming after you, then it's time to pop up somewhere else, right?
Yeah. They're trying to credit Biden. Well, Biden got on the phone with Putin and said, hey, you better do something about this. I'm like, okay, I realize this is the BBC, so it's not necessarily overly promoting USA. But that's like the second time they've silenced some kind of hacking effort that happened from over there. So maybe.
Yeah, I'm wondering, because I mean, if the FBI did something, we're not going to know. If they decided just to cut and run, we're also not going to know. So it's kind of one of those, hey, this is what happened a week before Putin and Biden met, and that's pretty much all we know. It's one of those scenarios, but
freaky.
Either way, it's interesting to see the hackers go underground.
They're in Siberia now.
Yeah, they'll pop up somewhere else. And then-
Alrighty.
the next one, I'm watching Steve pull it up in sort of like the green room, and this is hilarious. Steve, you found this, right?
Yeah. Oh, what is this? Aladdin?
Yeah.
So there is sound to this. So you got to check the link. We won't be able to hear it, but there's subtitles.
You can't play sound through a screen share?
Not on StreamYard.
Interesting. Unless you put it through your speakers, but that would be weird. That'd come through crappy.
Do you want equity? What?
I do.
This is great.
And it's actually, by the way, you can't listen to it right now, but if you go to YouTube and check this out, they've dubbed over the song. Like it is to like, I can show you the world. It's to that song.
Yeah,
and
it's
put the vocals on top.
It's crazy. Like it's accurate. Like they're good singers.
Issue by issue.
Anyway, so you get the idea. A whole new code.
Yeah.
Good pause. Yeah, check it out. So that is below if you're watching it on YouTube later. It's down there. Click it. It's like 3 minutes or 4 minutes, worth it. And whoever made that,
kudos.
You got Mihaha Comedy. Mihaha Comedy only has 536 subscribers. 537. We just subscribed.
38. Dios.
That's
all right.
Oh, there's an aerial version. Sorry, to see this.
Okay,
all right, next week.
All right, next show. Yeah, we'll put it on. All right, now we're about to go blow some money.
Nice. Attack IQ. This is the trend. There's some trending naming you'll see in a moment. 45 million to fuel expansion. Attack IQ is pretty cool. They do a lot of stuff around, you'd be not surprised, MITRE ATT&CK. This is Series C. So yeah, short. Founded, been around quite a while.
2013. Yeah, they're also used. I think it says later on they're also used by like Palo Alto, FireEye to help with their systems. They have a pretty broad portfolio, right? Like security optimization for Windows, Linux, and Mac.
Yeah,
I don't know many vendors who claim that. So yeah, I think total is 80 million in funding now for them.
Oh, is that where it says? Did you look it up? I
think it's down further.
Well, I believe.
Yeah, there it is.
79 million.
Yeah, 79 million. Sorry, rounded.
Nice.
Yeah, so
they're cool.
We'll see who they get acquired from soon.
Yeah, now they're at C, so they're probably worth around 400 million. Oh no, sorry, 400 million in a sensible world. Who knows in the modern cybersecurity world, right? Probably going to call themselves a unicorn now. But very cool company. So check them out. And next, I just jump right over. Is this the one I'm thinking of? That.
Yeah, we went from was it Security IQ to Risk IQ?
There we go.
It's a theme. You got to put IQ in the bingo card.
IQ's got to go on the bingo card. They never linked to the websites directly on these.
I was actually going to say that Microsoft seems like when you have companies who are like, hey, we secure for Mac, Linux, and Windows, I feel like Microsoft is sort of the default for companies like that because Microsoft does, like, workers work on Mac, workers work on Linux with Microsoft now. They've kind of opened the doors a little bit. So not a lot of companies can claim that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think this is, I don't know, what do you think what's their game? Like, what are they doing with Risk IQ? Are they going to build that in, or what are they doing here? Oh.
Microsoft will pay 500 million in cash. It's the report, but Microsoft did not confirm the figure. Risk IQ scours the web, mapping out details about websites and networks, domain name records, certificates, and other information, like who is registration data. So I've seen
Something
this
like
come up.
CrowdStrike, you know?
Yeah, I've seen this come up a lot of times, especially with some new AI capabilities of monitoring um, just network threats, like a lot of AI around, but also on the attack. So like pinging, somebody pings you, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to ping them to see what's going on, and then trying to figure out what services the person or the machine has, their capabilities. So kind of interesting. I don't know a lot about this, but it's got IQ in the name, so must be
Yeah.
pretty smart.
Yeah, it's not called Risk Stupid. That was
Yeah, and there,
like,
by the way, there it was. They had received 83 million in total funding, and the reported figure is 500 million. So 79 for Risk IQ, 400 million ish. Yeah,
yeah,
that checks
probably
out.
going to happen. So that's them there, right? They're going to be at Black Hat, of course, and DEF CON, which is on my birthday. But yeah, very cool. I think that's a good purchase for Microsoft, provided they do something cool with it.
Yeah.
And we have one more in this category.
Yeah.
We do. All right. Yeah. And what is going on? I have to accept cookies, otherwise you can't see it. Denial. Sophos acquires Capsule 8. Lightweight Linux server and container. See, cloud container security into its adaptive cybersecurity ecosystem. Now, how often do you run into Capsule 8? I don't really run into them very often. I know of them because didn't Kelly Shortridge used to work there? Like, she was quite a prominent speaker about security chaos engineering. For some reason, I think she was a Capsule 8 like advocate.
Sounds familiar.
But that's like that's why I know who they are. Well, that's the job of a good advocate, right? If you know the advocate, and that's why I've heard of Capsule 8, then that's awesome. I don't know if she still works there or not, but
I mean, this is for the cloud and Linux ecosystem. This kind of makes sense. It's why when you see companies that are Linux, Windows, and Mac, I think large organization, right? Because you probably, especially with remote work, you probably have a bunch of different users. Some people prefer Mac, some people prefer Windows. But when it comes to cloud security, and I think it says here, 77% are Linux platforms, and I wager it's probably slightly underplayed in a sense, because the thing is like Google's not your bare metal operating systems and like your virtual machine layers, right? Like your underlying operating system is probably Linux for all those cloud servers. Whether or not people put Windows on top of that is a different story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, in terms of cloud and containerization, I mean, the security, the positioning makes a lot of sense too, right? Yeah, there you go.
Runtime visibility and threat detection. See, these seems like these are the kind of people that would pick up exploit running.
I think this is eBPF technology, honestly, because if you look at how long they've been around, I think it was 2016, right? So it seems to be that was when like a lot of new features, new functionality got added to eBPF in the Linux kernel.
Yeah.
So the timing kind of matches up. The rise of containers, the rise of eBPF as a network and runtime detection system, and yeah, I mean they're looking at a runtime now. It's just about correlating it with the rest of your workflows, right? Like you can alert on runtime, but the integration's where the money's made.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just looking for eBPF. I should have got a card out. Could have got the card out. We could have done the bingo game. We have to plan that in advance. I need to laminate it first, obviously, before we can properly play. But it looks pretty cool. It looks like they have a very broad set of skills. That Sophos, who has more, almost the Venn diagram is quite good between Sophos and Capsule 8. So I think it's a great acquisition.
And an expensive one. So
yeah. Awesome. All right. Next.
On to the last section of the day.
Does everybody know what time it is?
Short intro is good intro. All right. You found this one, and it is.
Yeah. So this is just because we like to show Kubernetes dashboards, especially
Yeah.
as beginners. It's always fun just to go in and be like, like what's the flow of this? So just wanted to introduce you to this one, a new one, Headlamp. I'm gonna play with this on the weekend, see what I can bring next week if you wanted like a dummy version of me going through it. So yeah, new one. Headlamp is the open source web UI for Kubernetes created by the team at Kinvo, which was recently acquired by Microsoft. So
Interesting on theme.
yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty easy installation from what I could see. It's Kubernetes dashboards have been around for 5 years now. Their different functionality and what they do, I think, they're always trying to solve for a specific issue, right? Whether it's development issues or like getting developers to understand their namespaces, or if it's a cluster admin. Are you managing hybrid multi-cloud through Kubernetes? Then you need a specific dashboard and one that scales, right? So there's it's pretty cool stuff. Authentication's interesting, ties right into OpenID Connect. So pretty cool. And yeah, if you are looking for a demo, let me know and we'll bring it on.
I'm looking for a demo.
Yeah.
There we go. Even if it's just for me. We did Pixie Lab like one of the first shows we did, which was observability for Kubernetes, and which is why it's odd. I just like how primitive it looks. Like we obviously intentional, not this kind of old video game style look and feel to it. So I'd like to see that in real life.
I also like how it breaks down things into Kubernetes kind of, I don't want to say Kubernetes native language, but it is, right? It's like cluster your workloads, because it's not necessarily like containers and it's not necessarily deployments, right? It's pods, it's replica sets, it's config maps. You can almost say objects instead of workloads, but yeah, it's pretty cool. It's got security, it's got storage, all separated into its parts. So yeah, I'm looking forward to checking this one out. And from what I see, honestly, I really like the write-up. It's very concise. It's well written, which I love when documentation is written like this. So shout out, Rich.
This is a good article on it, and it's almost like a review in itself, isn't it? So, but it looked a little, I don't know, it looks cool. It kind of reminded me of like, I used to use Lens, but I mean, Lens is now on my Marantis, but it's similar approach, very popular, and Lens has plugins. So that's probably why he's checking out plugins down at the bottom. So you can extend it to do all the amazing things that I want to do. So I like it. I'm excited to see your demo next week.
Yeah, I thought I'd throw it in there. And yeah, come back next week.
Very cool. And props to Kinfolk. They've got a lot of other very cool tools that if you don't want to play with Headlamp, there's no shortage of interesting other things that they are responsible for, in addition to things like cloud native rejects, for people who never get their talks into KubeCon like us. All right.
On to the next one.
Yeah, the last one, which I'm just going to show it because this was like this is like a combined tool time / acquisition, isn't it? It was Aqua Security acquiring TFSec, the Terraform scanning open source tool, with a mind to who knows what, right? Incorporate it into Trivy at the very least. And having played with it, it's already there. You just type Trivy config here, and it'll, whatever configuration infrastructure as code it finds, it will spit out some TFSec results for you. So I guess that was probably a pretty trivial integration, but
assuming they're using like the usual Go repos for command line, like Kubernetes, right? Like Go or Cobra and all that. It's pretty much just, hey, point at this library and run these.
Boom.
These same functions. So yeah, pretty cool. I came across because there was a Reddit post about it, and I'm not sure if you have the Reddit post next, but it said, a single, what did it say? It said, simple security scanner for vulnerabilities, configuration issues, such as Kubernetes, Dockerfile, and Terraform. And is that overstating its position? Because I mean, it does do Dockerfile scanning. I need to check out the Terraform functionality.
I haven't tried. TFSec was pretty good, so there's no doubt that if they've not messed that up, it's still good. But I mean, it is a simple security scanner for those things. I mean, I can't argue about it.
Does
I mean,
it scan
Chekhov
Kubernetes
does.
objects too?
It does. I didn't think it
Okay.
does. I didn't think it did actually, but it does. I was like, because full disclosure, I used to work at Aqua Security, and I know how their stuff works. So I did, and Trivy did not do that when I was there, but that was 8 months. I don't know. I'm a man on the move, so it's tough to say whether it does or whether it doesn't, or when it showed up. But it's there now, so cool. And I could actually do a quick demo of it. Let's do. Will that work?
Aqua?
Yeah.
Are you doing Trivia?
Okay.
Yeah, you had Trivia up,
I
right?
might as well, right? I have Trivia. I have everything going. So I just ran it on a earlier version of our own YAML that
Mhm.
wasn't fully secured yet. So I figure, see, I'm using latest tag. I'm doing all sorts of dumb stuff. Not read only, seccomp policies, all the bad stuff. So yeah, and it does the Docker file. Thought the Docker file was okay, it looks like. But what I would call out, I mean, it's early for their, I think it's got to be early for YAML because they didn't used to have it. The number of policies checked against YAML was 34. So I think Chekhov has 300 or something for YAML. It's new and it's going to get better. And I like the output because it's just simple. It looks like Trivy. It looks a little bit like Kubench/Trivy, right?
Mhm. Yeah, there's also
But
what are the default policies? I do like that they have the message there. Like it's like here's the check, and here's the message. So and a little bit of information about it as well. I think that's well done. But yeah, there's a constant conversation about like especially these CLIs of like what are the default policies? How do I know about them? And
right.
like a lot of the Kubernetes ones are just like, hey, this is best practice. Okay, well, who defines that? Is there some security board, right? So it's the let's say the life cycle of security in different applications is very interesting, and I think that there's a lot of let's say calls for like authority people in authority positions to weigh in before it's you just best practice. Let's say,
Ooh.
you know,
Yeah, totally. So that, yeah, I think so. It's funny you mentioned about what policies are being actually run. I think that was one of the things I liked about Kubernetes was like that you could see, well, what policies are running and what are considered by default not worth running because they don't apply to everything, but you might want to turn them on. I think Trivy's got them all on by default, and I couldn't find a way necessarily to do that. But if you're experienced with Trivy and you know, then leave a comment and tell us we're wrong.
or if you can change them too, right? Because I mean, I know Kubelinter you could customize specific ones. You could do the same, right? With
You can create custom policies for Trivy.
yeah. Oh,
They
okay.
actually accept open policies now.
Gotcha. Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah, that's pretty cool actually.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a definite plus. I don't know how thorough that is because that didn't used to be there either.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think
out, right?
Realistically, like these, I think these tools are the building blocks for developers. I don't think sysadmins are going to work on the CLI and go and set up policies this way in people's environments or anything like that or recreate it. What you're going to see is you're going to see these things built either into pipelines or as like some sort of scripting check for developers before they push their changes, right? Of like, hey, you've built this. That's great. Just run a quick check on it and like let us know what's going on, right? That's going to be the workflow for it.
So I just crashed Trivy trying to scan Terraform.
Nice.
Oops. All right, we'll get rid of that. Brush that into the carpet. La 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 la. It's new. It's just been integrated.
And so last subject of the day, we're coming up on time, is the new website, Steve.
Yeah, us. All right, let's give you a little tour of that. So this is it, but I think what's cool about it is that it's probably there. Let me just get it on camera. All right, it's there. Way up there. is my Pi cluster, little router next to it. So this is running there. If you want to pick apart our security, feel free. It is here. There you go. The Hugo site for the Smash It Kubernetes and Cloud Native Security Twitch and YouTube show. And you can jump in there.
Yeah, you have the home lab and the home brew, right?
I get the homebrew. I got everything's homebrewing. So I'm actually doing a blog now off this because I went from generated Nginx YAML or sample YAML from the Kubernetes.io, right? That because you can go get it from there. And then I ran Chekhov on it. So this is it here in my Pi. So I just worked at it all Saturday until I had all of this passing. Except, you can already see that we have more than 33 policies. So until I got to here, containers should run as a high UID to avoid host conflict. So that's the last thing outstanding for this manifest to be correct, according to pretty much most of the scanners that I've run against it. And the only problem I've got, obviously, is that Nginx runs as user in group 101, which means it's not. It's a little low. That's correct. So I might suppress 1,000, that one.
Right?
Yeah, it wants you to be over some. Depending on the scanner, some scanners want you to be over 1,000, some over 10,000. They just want you to be clearly clear, right? And it's not. But so that's it. That's where you can go take a look at it. And if you want to dive into the actual, if you want to change it,
you got it.
Good luck.
Waleed's giving you
a
star.
Gold star for Waleed. So you could go in and it's a Hugo site. If you don't know Hugo, world's fastest framework for building websites, super easy, converts Markdown into sexy sites like so. And so now what's also awesome is that when this builds, actually we could just do this. So when I check in with a tag, so episode 24 has just been checked in. Was this your idea? I feel like this is your idea, but to check in based on tags. So now it's going to build for ARM, blah, 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 push it out to the latest tag on Docker Hub and blammo. There it is, ready to go. So the next step is to create a hook that tells a function running on my Pis, running using OpenFast, and OpenFast is there. OpenFast will then go grab the SHA and update the running deployment and check the running deployment against the deployment that's running in GitHub and make sure that there's no drift between what's running there. That's next step. What's
the deployment process like on a cluster?
I don't have it yet. It's manual right now.
So
that's what I don't like.
Yeah, if we haven't talked about this, so I was gonna. Yeah, Waleed's right. 101 was like the Red Hat default for user group and containers. There's definitely a conflict. But yeah, so there's because I had to do this for a cluster. You can do it a couple different ways. You can actually set a deployment strategy now in your deployment YAMLs, so that when it's updated, you don't have to do if you've done like the Kubernetes admin test, you'll know you can do like a Kubernetes upgrade deployment, right? If you're using something like OpenFast or some system. You can build your deployment strategy in. You can also set a startup probe. So let's say hey, I want to go pull the new version 0.25. It'll pull an extra container, bring it up, check it to make sure it's okay. Once it passes the startup probe, then it will change the network settings to allow it to be set. I'm assuming
it's doing that. We're good because I effed it up a lot today, and it brings up one and goes, "No, you suck."
Yep.
And the site never went down.
And it's a great setting, and that those features in Kubernetes are why people move to it, right? Is like I can bring up 2 sites, I can do A/B testing extremely easily. I don't necessarily need to bring 2.4 down. I can leave 2.4 up. We don't want to do that, but we could. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, and then the other thing I was going to say is the reason you could see it is because the CNAME. Well, basically, I'm pointing at Cloudflare, and Cloudflare is pointing at us, and we have 18 unique visitors. Look at that. Hopefully that'll go up. Look at that. Woo! People are looking at it. So Cloudflare, in order for Cloudflare to work, is you have to go to Cloudflare for Teams, create an account. This is all free, by the way. This is what rocks. Create a free account in the free tier for Cloudflare for Teams, add a site. It will import all of your records and say, oh, just forward it to their DNS from wherever it is you bought your domain. And then you add a CNAME record, but there's a series of things you have to do. And these instructions, I can confirm, are super correct. Like there's no weird crap you have to do here. The only weird crap you have to do when you're doing all this is the instructions it's telling you to do, or even instructions on blogs on the internet, is to go get Cloudflare, run it on your Pi, and then it will create a tunnel out to Cloudflare. But that's not straightforward necessarily, because it's like, right, well, everything on my Pi is being controlled through Kubernetes. Why am I running something on my pod? So that is where, if I back out of here, I now have Cloudflare at ARM64 as a container. I don't have the repo yet, because that's just when I first tested it, I put in there. So what that does is that that will create Cloudflare running in an ARM environment for Raspberry Pis. And then all you have to do is, when I get the repo done, is create secrets out of the configuration files for your specific tunnel. So anyone can use that container as long as you have the secrets created that map to the right configuration files. Otherwise, it just doesn't start. But otherwise, that will auto start, and that will connect out to your Cloudflare. And then you just create the YAML to say, point at my load balancer for the website. So now it forwards through and connects to the load balancer for the website. And then all this is happening through all that, which I think is fucking cool.
What are you using for the load balancer again?
I use MetalLB.
Yeah, which you were showcasing 2 weeks ago.
Which I did 2 weeks ago because it was super easy. So this is like, I should do
and runs on Pi.
And runs on Pi. It does. Yeah, that was part of the reason I was excited about it, because I didn't have to do all the stupid stuff. I like this stupid stuff you have to do for everything else to try and run on Pi. More work for me.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. And I remember actually, I think Waleed was giving you the suggestion, right? Because you were working on, what were you, instead of MetalLB, you were doing something different before you found it, right? And there was
well, Waleed was the one who gave. Well, how do you do that? That's neat. Yeah. New setting. Thank you. Waleed's the one who, when I was playing on the Pis, I had a performance measurement for Rook and Ceph.
That's right.
And he yucked. He rained my parade with, hey, you could just use this. And then the week after, and if Waleed's still watching, I found out that one doesn't work on ARM64, giving justification to my custom build of the performance measurement tools, which is also in my Docker Hub if you want to use it.
Cool.
So my Docker Hub is quickly filling with ARM64 stuff.
I was going to say a lot of public containers right there. And hey, if you guys are security people, don't pull public containers from Steve. Okay.
No.
Make sure they're scanned.
No.
Verify.
Each and every one has a backdoor.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it for the week. Anything other crazy?
We nailed it. 1 hour again.
Yeah. Any other announcements? Anything crazy out there? Anybody in the chat want to give some shout outs? Cube STR has come up. Cool.
That's the one. That's the one that I didn't work on ARM.
Yeah, that's it. All right. But yeah, tune in, Crypto Miners for Clarity. Tune in next week. I'm going to be taking a look at Headlamp just real quick, and then I'll see what else I can throw up in my Kubernetes cluster. We'll see how many demos we can get in here. But yeah, I appreciate everybody checking out the site and coming to the show. Steve, any last words?
Nope. I'm going to go golfing now because it's beautiful weather in the UK, and that never happens.
And I got to get back to work after I eat lunch.
All right.
Thanks for joining. I'm Mike Foster.
I'm Steve Jaguar.